Alright, what's cracking, guys? I know I feel like I start every video this way, so I'm just gonna stop saying it eventually, but I know it's been a while. Been busy. Just wanted to showcase, I put these 40-inch tires on my Humvee. I did a lot of research about this, a lot of conflicting info. You know, I'm gonna say some controversial stuff and give my opinion, but I think I'm gonna steer you in the right direction. Or maybe you can just say I'm an idiot in the comments, whatever. It's almost like I have my guard up. YouTube comments are an insane place. But let me show you what I went with for 40s here. That annoying noise is my onboard air for my Jeep. I'm filling these things up. They're at like 10 PSI or 15 because I just mounted them. So, these are the Black Rhino Armory wheels. Now, if you're like me, on video and in pictures, they look maybe a little fake, a little chintzy. In person, I assure you, they look absolutely amazing. In fact, even though they are fake, like that's not a real beadlock, and you know, everything on this is fake except for the actual lugs. And I don't have the hubcap on there because I usually don't run hubcaps on my stuff. But even though they are fake, they look more real than the Humvee real wheels, if that makes sense. They look awesome in person. So I'll just start by saying that. The second thing, if I remember correctly, I did the +6 offset. If that's wrong, I'll throw something on the screen that says I'm wrong. It's plus whatever. There's a lot of math and stuff that goes into it. These are wider wheels than the stock Humvee wheels. You know, offset's different, blah, blah, blah. That achieves about this look right here. So it pokes out a little bit. Now, here's where I'm going to get a little controversial. A lot of people say things like, you know, I don't like the skateboard look. I don't want it to poke out. It looks terrible. I gotta shut this. I shut that down for a moment. So a lot of people I see online, especially in the Humvee world, which, you know, I'll be honest, no offense to boomers, but it's kind of like boomer central. A lot of people say they don't like the skateboard look. Well, if you actually off-road or you have plans on off-roading, which I definitely do with this one, just like the last one, having a little bit of poke, if not maybe even a little more, is really good for off-roading. Let me show you my Jeep. Okay, so those are just 35s. This Jeep's gonna get I'm gonna do a whole 2.0 version, 1 tons 40s. That's the topic for a different video. These are just 35s. You've got a good, you know, 3 or 4 inches of poke on this. I've got less on this, maybe about 2 to 3 inches. In fact, I'd argue maybe half, depending on what angle you're looking at. The poke, or the amount the wheels stick out, is really essential for protecting your body. So you might think, oh, I'll just drive better, I won't run into stuff. When you factor in big rocks, mud, you know, water and moss on the rocks where you slip, just whatever, you just simply can't. You are going to rub your wheels on stuff. You know, you can see how torn up the side of the wheel, the tire is. I mean, there's literally it's wearing on the side because I've rubbed it on so many rocks. That one isn't even that bad. A few of these have actual slices in them from rocks slicing into the wheel. And, you know, I'm not as worried about it on the Jeep because I've got these rock rails and they will protect the body anyway. But I'll probably make something similar on the Humvee anyway, getting off topic. But if you do plan on off-roading, and I mean off-roading, not driving down gravel roads, real off-roading, I definitely would go with at least this offset, if not a little bit more. So one thing to clear up as well, pretty sure I'm correct on this. Once again, I will clarify if I'm wrong. Plus offset is less poke. So the more negative offset you go, the more these things will poke out. So some people do negative, I think it was 13 or 14 or something like that. You're gonna have more poke. Not necessarily a bad thing, but you do start having diminishing returns where, for one, Humvee's already super wide and you're gonna make it wider, which isn't great off-road. And two, you could potentially weaken stuff because you have more leverage on your suspension parts than you would. So I want to go crazy, but I think this is about the perfect setup. Long-winded way of getting to that point. Second controversial thing I'll say, and just look at that, man. I need to paint those doors, but that looks absolutely fantastic. I'll take you in real quick to the stock wheels and tires. All right, this is a good size comparison as well, because this is my spare. It's going to be my spare. These are the old ones, in fact. Oh, yeah, we got a wasp caught in a spider web. Interesting. Shove these in a little bit more. It's a significantly bigger tire. Don't know how that comes through on camera, and this is stacked too high, so kind of offsets it. One thing nice for off-roading, you've got a little bit of side lugs. You're going to have that with pretty much any 40-inch tire. That's pretty common. That helps a ton. My old Humvee had intercos on. They were actually just 37s. Even if you stick with 37s, I really recommend an aftermarket tire, because these side lugs are essential when you're, in the rocks, in the mud, whatever it might be. This is completely smooth, and that's for no other reason, in my opinion, other than it's cheap to manufacture them that way. Second thing is these suckers are unbelievably heavy. I don't know, I'm going to weigh them and I'll throw the number up on screen, but I think I'll throw the number up on screen if I weigh these in time. If not, I'll comment it when I do weigh them. But I would guess that these are anywhere from 30 to 50 pounds lighter a piece than these. These are balls of lead. I cannot believe how heavy that is. And that still has the run flat in it, so take that into account. Which leads into my next point. These are so unbalanced, it's ridiculous. A lot of people like to say, oh, over 55 miles an hour riding in a Humvee, it's like entering the Earth's atmosphere in a spaceship. It's so shaky. 99% of that, also people like to complain about the ride and say it rides like a shopping cart and stuff. 99% of that, trust me, is tires. These military tires are terrible. They shake. I think a lot of it's because the run flat in there. They're not really balanced as far as I know. If they are, they've done a terrible job balancing them. They are horrible. They are so rigid that you will feel every pebble and every little bump in the road. They are just awful. And the other thing is they're awful for traction. If you try these in the snow, and I know there's going to be that one person in the comments that says they have no problem or whatever, and they live in like Alabama or something. But if you try these in the snow, you will not even get out of your driveway. I've done it multiple times. I've tried. I want to have fun when it's snowed. These are horrible. Tires like this, even though they're mud tires, they do okay. So I can't think of how else I can trash the stock tires, but if the ride in your Humvee is rough, if you don't like whatever, put some aftermarket tires on it. It makes a massive, massive difference. In fact, the Humvee rides really good. I would argue it rides better than my Jeep over there, which isn't saying anything, and it rides better than that first-gen Cummins over there, which also is not saying much. But, those are civilian vehicles. They're designed to ride at least somewhat okay. So one final thing I'll say is this is not yet lifted. I am going to do a 2-inch body lift. I'm just throwing out statements people are probably going to constantly disagree with. I prefer the body lift. I think the body lift is a much better idea. Few reasons for this. I've off-roaded Humvees probably a lot more than the average person, not as much as some people, but I've off-roaded them enough to get body damage and scrape things and, almost flip over and stuff like that. The primary issue I've experienced with the Humvee is not the ground clearance under here. This is fine. Sorry for getting my finger in there. A grown man could literally crawl under that, especially with these 40s. And in fact, let's compare it to this Jeep, which has pretty good ground clearance. Most would consider that pretty good compared to most off-road vehicles. So primary issue is not that ground clearance. That is ridiculously good. Primary issue is this ground clearance. Now that seems like it's pretty good as well, and it is. But once again, if you are off-roading, the biggest thing you got to worry about in a Humvee, for the most part, is you go over a large rock, which isn't massive, you know, 1.5 feet tall, something like that, and you bottom out really hard right here. In fact, you can see damage from when it was in the military, where somebody probably did that, and then you scrape it all the way around along your aluminum rocker panel, and you just mess it up. Look at that damage. This is all before I got the Humvee. You can see, I mean, I bedlined over it. That is the primary issue. So also, mine doesn't have this, but my previous one did. You completely dent in your floor pan, and that's a bit of a bummer as well. You know, you gotta, I guess, break out the sledgehammer and try and dent it back or whatever you want to do. So this doesn't have the body lift yet. I highly recommend the body lift and not the suspension lift, because really you don't need more ground clearance in the suspension, especially if you're already running 40-inch tires, in my opinion. You're already gonna have more ground clearance than pretty much any other rig on the trail. In fact, if you look at the difference, the reason this isn't an issue on the Jeeps, look how much higher that side is than that. I know I got that rock rail on there, but that's a big weak spot for the Humvee, and this Jeep's on 35s and this Humvee's on 40s. So imagine if this Jeep was on 40-inch tires, how much higher that would be. Doesn't really matter if you scrape the chassis or the transmission pan, you know, the protector. That doesn't really damage anything. Scraping the body though, you will get body damage, especially on this aluminum body. So I'm sure someone already is saying, well, suspension lift, you'd accomplish the same thing with your body being raised and you'd get more ground clearance. So why not do that? Well, for one, it's more expensive. I'll try and put a link in the comments to where you can get the body lift kit. It's insanely cheap. For two, you know, if you space that out, you put spacers under your springs, or let's say longer springs, and shocks, I guess you'd have to do too, you're going to change the geometry of your A-arms. So these are designed actually pretty well from the factory. And like I said, with the proper tires, they ride pretty good. You don't need to be taking that geometry and making it do this by putting longer springs and spacers on it. Once again, just my opinion, you're gonna have a little bit less rear track width, you're gonna change your camber, you're gonna change the geometry. I don't know this for sure, but pretty sure that's gonna make it ride rougher. A lot of bad things for gaining more ground clearance where a grizzly bear could crawl under that thing. So, you know, once again, don't think you need more ground clearance there. I really think the best place to get clearance is on the sides, and also running rock rails regardless is a good idea. Now, you're probably just watching this video to see what the tires look like, and I'm going on this big crazy diatribe because that's just who I am. Here's a stock body height Humvee. Have not lifted it yet. I will probably put at the end of the video what it looks like lifted. This video is probably already half an hour long, but that's how it goes. Parts that are going to be close with 40s. The exhaust right here, very close, about as close as you can get. That's about maybe half an inch. So you can unbolt it there if you want, and that'll totally solve that issue. That's how I ran my previous Humvee, even though I only had 37s. It actually didn't come with this pipe, so I ran it that way anyway. You could also go to an exhaust shop, and just have this bent, you know, out of the way and more close to the body probably, or maybe up, or, you know, like I think the H1s go up and around the fender. And Humvees don't articulate very much, so I think even at the height it's at now, this hitting here is probably a non-issue. I don't think that's ever going to happen. This articulates so much that that will actually hit that. So I technically need a bigger bump stop, but Humvees do not articulate much at all. You're talking 2 to 3 inches maybe. The bigger issue on stock body height is up front. Now, if you manage to only go straight off-roading, you may not actually hit that, especially if the sway bar is still attached. Once again, there's like no articulation, so you might actually not hit. The issue comes, and I'm too lazy to show you this, but I could start at my Humvee and turn the wheels at full lock. The issue comes when they're at full lock. This starts to get pretty close to this, and probably the bigger concern is, let's say this is turned to the right, this starts to get really close to this. I'm talking like a 1/4 inch. So that's really why you need a body lift. If you just want to be a mall crawler, and hey, I'm not judging you, you know, but if you just want to do that, go around on the street, look cool, I think you could technically get away with just leaving the body height where it is and running 40s. Please just do not get those giant wheels with the rubber band tires. Trust me, this is a 29-year-old speaking to all you younger kids. I don't know why you'd have a Humvee, but I guess I had a Humvee when I was like 24. Nobody thinks that's cool. I never thought it was cool, for the record, but literally nobody thinks that's cool. Please do not do that. What was that, like the 6th controversial statement? That one's probably not very controversial. So I think that's all there is to it, though. I recommend a 2-inch, maybe a 2.5-inch body lift. Does look good, man. It does look good. One more quick point, just for a piece of advice, and because I can never shut up. Those are the 9-inch wide wheels. So common mistake from non-off-roaders, probably myself would have made the same mistake too back in the day, is you want to run little wheels width-wise. 9-inch wheels, 13.5-inch tires. It's a perfect combo. Contrary to popular belief, unless you are doing very gnarly stuff, I'm talking like rock buggy, like really, really gnarly stuff, you usually can get away without bead locks. For example, this Jeep here, I run that thing down at 10 PSI, sometimes 8 PSI. Those are not bead locks. And they are, if I remember right, I think they're 8-inch wheels and 12.5-inch wide tires. So they practically bead themselves. In fact, I didn't need to do anything to bead them or those when I mounted them other than put air in them. So like I said, if you're doing really, really gnarly stuff, which no one would ever do with the Humvee anyway, you can run bead locks. Otherwise, just run wheels that are a little bit less wide than your tire. So 9-inch wheels on the 13.5-inch tire, I think is a pretty good combo. You could also probably get away with 8-inch, but that's probably pushing it, just because that's getting to be a pretty big ratio. Your tires might be getting really round and kind of wear weird. And of course, this is all off-road and not on the street for legal reasons. But 9-inch wheels, 40-inch, 13.5-inch tires, you'll probably never lose a bead. A Humvee, I would usually run that down at 15 PSI. Humvees are a lot heavier than two-door Jeep YJs. So I mean, if you go too low, the bulge is just going to get ridiculous with the extra weight of that Humvee. But don't get really wide wheels. The other thing that's kind of nice, and the degree of this isn't as extreme on the Humvee, but on less wide wheels, your tire will protect your wheel a little bit more. It's still going to get torn up, but not to as much as it would if you ran 10-inch wheels, for example, or 11 or whatever. It's more extreme on this Jeep. You can see how much that tire protects that wheel. You know, same kind of deal. I don't off-road this Cummins truck, but same kind of deal. It really protects it. It's another reason big, huge wheels and rubber band tires are ridiculous, because if you ever go off-road, you're just going to tear up your nice wheels. So, top tip for you. Hope that helps as well. Alright, hey guys, this video just keeps dragging on, but I figure you want more information rather than less information. So, just went for a test drive with it as is, no lift, and it was fine, actually. So, nothing rubbed. I didn't hit any big potholes or anything like that. The other interesting thing is power actually felt, I'll be honest, I didn't notice a difference. So people say, you know, don't go to 40s from the stock 37s because you won't have the power to turn those tires. I do have my injection pump turned up. I have a video on that you can check out on my channel on how to do it. It's really easy. It does take some skill, you know, so you do, I don't know, just watch the video, you'll see what I'm talking about, but it's pretty easy. I noticed maybe a little more black smoke than I do with the 37s, but I think the massive weight difference helped to offset it. So power felt about the same. I did not have any rubbing. Once again, this is just street stuff. You know, this is mall crawler stuff. Obviously, I didn't off-road it. I just went for a test drive. Ride was a million times better, and they were very balanced, which gets me into another point. Use balance beats. You can use the wheel weights, but it's hard to balance a tire that big with wheel weights. And also, if you off-road, you're going to pick up clumps of mud, you're going to pick up rocks, you're going to pick up all things that could throw the wheel off balance. Not to mention, it's pretty frequent when you're doing creek crossings and bumpy road, washboard and rock crawling and stuff, that you're going to knock off some wheel weights. So balance beats are the way to go. All four were perfectly balanced. I got it up to, I think I only did about 70. I didn't get on the highway, but I got it up to about 70 miles an hour and no vibration whatsoever. Just so you know, I just bought Amazon balance beads. They have a huge kit that comes in like a little tub with a scooper. And I did 10 ounces per tire. I think for this weight, they actually recommend about 8, but going a little more is, I found it doesn't hurt, certainly. It can be helpful. So I did 5 scoops. Each scoop was 2 ounces. So yeah, 10 ounces. Another quick point, just because this video it's going to be long. Another quick point is don't use airsoft BBs. Airsoft BBs don't really work. Usually when you see people complaining about balance beads, it's because they used airsoft BBs. Don't use those. Balance beads are smaller, they're ceramic, and they just work better. So highly recommend balance beads. Another quick point about the poke, or how much they stick out, because I won't shut up about this. That is also helpful. It doesn't matter so much in the rear, but in the front, you got to remember, you're going from camera around finally. You're going from whatever that width is. I can't remember. I think it's only like 8 or 8.5, all the way up to a 13.5 with most 40-inch tires. So if you don't have a little bit of offset where these would poke out of the fenders a bit, you're going to be way too close, I think, on your suspension components and stuff, and you're going to decrease your turning circle, which isn't great on a Humvee to begin with. So, part of that is just accounting for the much wider tires. But yeah, I think that's all I had to say. Hopefully, unless I think of something else, the next scene will be what this thing looks like lifted with the body lift.